I have the famous Grace Daly on here.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad someone thinks I'm famous.
Yeah.
Hey, Rich, how you doing?
I'm good. ShopTalk 360 founder, right?
Yes.
The big dog. Yeah, I noticed if you go to your website, gracedaily.com, or ShopTalk 360, they both connect now, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And I did that a couple of years ago. It was just one of those things, when you're a solopreneur, going on 10 years, knock on wood, when you're a solopreneur, it was just one of those things that I didn't get a chance to kind of like some of the technical stuff to clean up and gather together. But ultimately, the brand is ShopTalk 360.
Nice. Now, what you do, and one of the reasons I had to have you on my podcast is very unique. Not a lot of people do what you do, and you're so good at it. So many people know you for it. Besides, you do consulting, you're involved with, let's get into this, design, construction, mainly retail, would you say? Or restaurants, I guess?
Restaurants too, yep. So ShopTalk 360 covers all of commercial space, but my consulting areas have been primarily retail and restaurant.
Right. And you are really well known for having amazing, what would you call them? I mean, they're group gatherings. Seminars, but you're separate than, say, Prism or something like that. You're an independent, more or less.
Sure. I'm
How would you?
independent. I'm a very small, I guess the best way to describe it is I'm a very small boutique media platform. So it's the venues I hold are generally between 125 to 150 people. I think a black tie red carpet event I did a couple of years, that probably hit 200 because that was a special event and that was a lot of fun. So it's really more connecting on more intimate gatherings, intimate groupings of folks, as opposed to these large conferences.
Yeah, kind of explain. I mean, I've been to one of them. It's awesome. So we went to one in Buckhead. You get to meet so many interesting people, and obviously, for there was retail and restaurant. But in your case, kind of explain why you bring these people together. What's the purpose of that, and what do a lot of times people get out of it? What do you get out of it? Because it takes a long time. I think people don't realize putting something together. With that level of talent, I guess you could say, or different people in different organizations, takes a lot of effort. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. So what makes ShopTalk 360 more unique as a media platform than many other publishers out there with their magazines and their conferences and their thousands of attendees, trade shows, is that ShopTalk 360 really focuses more on the individual, on the leaders, on the people in our industry. We do, of course, on the panel discussions and events, we talk about technology, we talk about innovation, we talk about the industries changing and growing and trends as a whole. But I'm so interested in the people in our industry, their career paths, their learning curves, their, whatever they can share with other folks that are either newcomers or other folks that are going through similar challenges they may have experienced. So it's just really about the individual and about shared learning. So the panels I do primarily are throughout the country. I've done some in Atlanta, Chicago, New York are big hits. Hopefully I'll be scheduling one the end of this year or early next year for San Fran. So they're really designed to have great conversations, between leaders in retail, restaurant, hospitality, all commercial spaces. Actually, I've got a wonderful, dear colleague, friend of mine. He's with assisted living. So I'm so excited to get him on the panel because, again, it's about the built environment. It's about the physical space and what we do in it. So it's a great venue for panel discussions, chats, and also just to really get that live in-person FaceTime, because and of course with what's going on now in our world, it makes it a little bit more challenging, and we're doing this type of media through this type of panels and discussions through Zoom, like I am with you now. So it changed it up a little bit. So we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, how do you choose who gets invited, who doesn't? I always found that quite interesting because you bring in so many different type of people. It's not just saying, hey, it's VPs or hey, it's you know, it's just maintenance facility. Hey, it's this. You bring in so many different people. Do you figure out what you think's going to work? I'm sorry, as far as connecting them, like they would all work together, because you can invite so many people, but you keep it quaint, like you said. How do you figure out who you should invite, who you shouldn't? Like,
so first off, I think leadership is really a mindset, right?
sure.
And whether you're top dog, SVP, or your C-suite, you know, making all the decisions, calling all the shots, leadership is definitely a mindset, and it goes from, from the people in the field, whether they're store managers or restaurant managers, all the way up to the folks that are actually building and designing the
Right.
facilities. So I like to have a mix of many folks. You know, some folks are maybe more decision makers with their chain, but then some folks can have a facilities manager or a construction manager title, but they're the decision makers for their organization. So every organization is a little different, the way they're set up and the way they have approval processes, I guess, is the best way to describe it. But I guess I really just like to mix it up to show that there's diversity, to show both men and women, to show just everyone from VP to manager, because everyone's role is really interconnected, right?
Of course,
and we're all dealing, and at the end of the day, we're all dealing with our industry, our contractors, suppliers, architects, designers.
Yeah, and do you want to tell people, like, say you got invited to your one of your events, what kind of explain what's going to happen when you kind of get there? I've been there and I've gone through it, but you'd explain it a lot better. You know, how many days are they? What they're like, what's going to be expected? Because I think maybe some people would definitely like to get involved with this with you, or people watching this kind of, we're talking about it, but don't necessarily know. They kind of think it's going to be like some convention, or just everybody just sitting kind of in a room in a hotel talking, right? And it's not like that with you. You do so many different unique things.
Yeah, so it's just a little bit of background. So I've been an entrepreneur now for 10 years. And one of the first things, one of my first main clients I worked with back in 2009, 2009 was a France Media, and I actually worked and I built their conference model, where it wasn't a traditional conference model where thousands or even hundreds of people come. It was a very unique one-on-one type of model where to best describe it, it's almost kind of like speed dating. So you have the buyer, the person with the need come, and then you have the supplier or the service person come, and then you see how they can match, if they match up.
Yep.
So that was a great way to really understand how people interact. And I kind of felt that, what we did was, back then, a lot of folks started doing these one-on-ones, okay? And it was very unique from the fact that it's not a huge conference. In fact, we prefer more intimate gatherings. So this way, hopefully by the end of the conference, if it's overnight, or at the end of the event, you're on a one-on-one basis. You're not just going around trading, business cards. It's more about the one-on-one FaceTime. So typically with the ShopTalk 360 panel, I've got a panel of folks, whether, mostly from brands. I've got one that I'm working on now, and it's got an eatery/restaurant. It's got retail folks. It's got a luxury retail. It's got senior assisted living, and it's got showrooms. So it's just a nice kind of variety of panelists. And it'll be interesting when we do that panel to see what commonalities they have, as well as what challenges and differences they have. So typically for one of the events, you'll come, we'll have a nice, relaxing mixer. Food is very important to me in my life.
You're a New Yorker.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
There you go.
Yes. So between the food, some nice light apps and some drinks, it's just a very relaxed atmosphere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. From there, a lot of networking opportunities. I'm sorry?
It's fun.
Yeah,
Yours are fun.
Thank you. Yeah, and
they're a blast.
That's what it is.
It's fun.
Because you know what? If you want to go to a conference, okay, there are other conferences for that. You want to go for, continuing ed, your CE credits. Yeah, there are other platforms for that. I just want to keep ShopTalk 360 panels a little bit lighter, enjoyable, and just kind of informal. So this way people can really connect.
Absolutely.
And then we have our panel that lasts anywhere from 45 minutes to sometimes even an hour, 15 minutes, depending on how engaged the audience is. Because I'll usually start it off, and then Q&A will just kind of take off on its own. And then of course, then there's the after party. Then the folks go out and they kind of go do dinner or drinks together after the events. So it's been a good model.
It's great. It's great. So let's go. What's interesting about you is where you started, where you ended up. You were born in New York, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I was, yes.
Your parents are from China, though, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You grew up in Chinatown, though, right near Little Italy, right?
So impressive. Remember?
I remember that, right? A long time ago when I met you, like 10 years ago, when I think we didn't eat in Mulberry, and we ended up going Frencher for some reason one night. But when I first, you were describing, and
it was in Hollywood.
No, it was in New York. It was in Manhattan. I met you, Mikey. You came and met us, and we went to a French small quaint restaurant, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, why did I think that was Hollywood?
That was later I met you, and then
that was probably a later time.
Yeah, that was during the Grammy. No, like the Grammys were going on at that point in time, and then you ended up going like a year later.
Yes, and I met up with you and Mike, and we went to a real nice restaurant in Hollywood. It's all about the food.
Exactly. That's the day Whitney Houston passed away. That's why I remember it, because somebody I knew worked at Beverly Hills Hilton and messaged me and said, "Rich, you're not going to believe this," and she was in charge of PR.
That was 2013.
Oh, that's when it was. But when we were in New York, you were describing, because I loved going to Mulberry Street, New York and stuff, and you're like, I grew up right next to this.
I remember. It was this wonderful, quaint little restaurant, and they only
had like 4 tables, or you had to sit outside. So your parents were from China, but you grew up in the garment industry like my family, if I'm not mistaken, or you were involved with it one way or another. In my family, my grandfather owned one of the largest garment tailoring shops in all of Chicago. You started off in that industry, correct, with your parents?
Well, actually, what's interesting is that I actually went to art school. My background is I went to School of Visual Arts in New York City, Hunter College, and graduated from FIT. My background is media communications and graphic design. So I have a very visual background.
Right.
But where the garment industry ties into was growing up in the Lower East Side in Chinatown until I was like 13 or 14, and we moved out to Queens, to the burbs. My mom used to work in the garment industry.
That's what it was. I knew. Yeah, your parents, right? She like my grandparents.
Seamstress. Yep, she was a seamstress, and she worked such long, hard hours. And nowadays, a lot of that of that type of work has been outsourced to other countries. But back then, you're talking, in the 70s, early 80s, it was all in it was garment. It was factories. So it was factories in New York. Sure.
Chicago too, a lot of Italians, as you know, would intermingle with the Chinese because they were all kind of seamstresses or involved with design or fashion in one way or another, which is quite interesting, because even my uncle ended up marrying a Chinese woman that he worked with. She was a seamstress and he was a designer.
So, oh, wow. There you go.
It's pretty crazy.
That's cool.
So you went to school. What happened? How did you start kind of going into your own thing with construction, design, retail?
Okay. So
how did that, because that's you know what I mean? Let's get into that.
Yeah. So that's a nice jump. So what happened was, after high school, I was going to School of Visual Arts. I'm going to FIT, and I always went to college with the exception of the first year at School of Visual Arts, where I went full-time day. I just always wanted to work.
Right.
I think ever since I was little, and there's stories I can share with you there, I just always wanted to work. It was like, all right, someone get me out of this school. Like, I just want to get busy. I just want to start making money. That's just
I felt the same way with money.
Yeah, it was.
I think if you grew up in a city and you didn't have a lot of money, I do think it's a different perspective. In the suburb,
absolutely.
It was funny because my cousins were all kind of laid back, like, relax, dude. I'm like, when you live near a city or in a city, you're like, I need money to do anything. I'm like, I got to go. If I got to park a car, I need money. I don't live in the burbs. Right? I want
everything.
Costs money. But
yes, everything costs money to keep on moving. And also to being the second youngest of 6 kids. The firstborn in the United States, in New York. I think just innately, I just always kind of felt like, I don't know, I just always kind of felt like I didn't want to be a burden to my parents. Like, oh, they got enough to take care of. I'll just take care of myself. Like, I'll just go do my thing. I'm going to start, working, so on and so forth. So anyway, started working, since I was 14 or 15. That was through a high school program. Okay. That was
so
when
you're
I was
in Queens, not Manhattan, right? When you're
No,
working?
yes, correct. I was in
Okay.
Queensborough, yes. And I used to go to high school of art and design. So always, again,
Okay.
a very heavy art career, visual career.
Okay.
So when I started going to like a FIT, that was more night school. And I always worked during the day.
Okay.
So I would work retail and
Like a lot of people.
Yep.
Where'd you work first?
Okay, one of the first retail jobs I ever had, retail/eatery jobs, was at the Citibank building on 53rd and 6th, maybe, I forget. But it was right around there. The building's still there, and it was this place called Cafe Buongiorno, and I made cappuccinos, and there was pastries, and there was like breakfast sandwiches and
I got you.
lunch sandwiches. Again, food,
Yes,
right?
yes.
It was great.
All right, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Jump back into what you
No.
were saying. I just want to, because it's funny how some people start at Neiman's, Nordstrom's, Saks. It's funny you started at this place. It's very interesting because it does start.
Absolutely.
It segues you into, every job or everything we do kind of leads to something else. Like if you didn't go work retail, who knows where you may have ended up, right? Just
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So so that was my very first role, and I think I was still doing it during high school, like after school. But my first full-time role actually was with a natural foods company called Commodities, located in Tribeca, back in the mid 80s to early 90s. I worked there.
Okay.
And they were unique in the fact that this was before, the chain stores of Whole Foods and Sprouts and so on. Yeah. And so they were more kind of like, I think they had like 3 or 4 stores in the New York City area. We also imported, we also exported, we also sold to natural food restaurants. So I started as stock person, went to cashier, then went to buyer, then I just general managed the business. And I did that for a long time. And I think I switched off and went back to school. I think it was like 91 or 92. It was right before I got married. So so that's where I got my feel for retail. And then what happened was, after I graduated, I got my associates in graphic design and media communications. I ended up joining Blockbuster Video.
Really?
Regional operations office. And that was in New York City by Penn Station, by Penn Plaza. That was my first. Wow. Yeah, that was the first time I started working with a retail chain. So it was like, and I was like assistant to like the director of operations. So I kind of watched, how, there were district managers, there were regents, and back in that was like 92, 90.
Yeah, that's where believe it or not, my ex-wife worked for Blockbuster, the same what you do, downtown Chicago.
Oh yeah.
What are the odds? I mean, I never knew that about you, and that's where she worked when she was younger for a while. Yeah.
So what happened was, I was there as really just administrative assistant to the regional director of operations. And then from there, I was there for maybe about like 18 months, 2 years. I got an opportunity, and this is the switch, right? This is a switch. I got an opportunity to go work in the Westbury Northeast construction department, learning how to, being a project coordinator, learning how to build Blockbuster video stores. And, it was something new. I'm always intrigued to this day, try to learn something new.
Right.
I'm more intrigued with that than probably the salary. I think back then it paid like $22,000 or whatever. It was like $1,000 more than what I was making. So I'm like, when you're young, you're like, oh yeah, sure, try anything. You know what I mean?
Were you living in Queens still or Manhattan now?
Okay, so then I was living in Queens.
Okay.
I was living in Queens, and I just had my son. So he was baby / toddler age probably. So I started working with Blockbuster Video, and from
Nice.
there I just watched, because I'll tell you, you know, you want to talk about a building machine back in the 90s.
Yeah,
It was incredible.
I know.
It was absolutely
I'm sure.
incredible. And we had a good run, and then from there,
Yeah.
after that, I went to build toy stores with Nudica Dudo, and then after that, I was with Vitamin World. Had a nice run there for over 7 years. Built over 550 stores nationwide,
That's
and then
awesome.
and then after that, I went to Ann Taylor, and
Yeah.
after that, I was at Equinox Fitness, and after that, I was like, all right, if I don't
Oh
go,
shit. How,
so that's
how'd
been
you
like
get involved with Equinox?
so I was I was wrapping up Ann Taylor, and I was like, okay, let me try Equinox. I was the senior director of facilities and special projects, right? And can I tell you, going from retail
Yeah.
to Equinox
It's
Fitness, great
yeah.
brand, by the way,
Yeah, yeah,
incredible
yeah. You
brand.
like it? Okay.
Yeah, they're a great brand.
Me and
But then
Mike go to there sometimes. California.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
New
I mean,
York. They're big in New York, right?
they're huge in New York.
They're
Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
So going there was just a huge eye opener, because I realized how easy it was
Sure.
with retail, because the gyms open at 6 a.m.
Sure.
and they close at midnight. So any remodel work had to be
Yeah.
done from midnight to like 5 in the morning.
Yeah. It's
And
tight.
so it was just, I was like, wow. I mean, retail was like a cakewalk compared to that,
Sure.
uh, so that was a great experience. And then after that, that's when I went entrepreneurial and started writing for trade magazines, and working with this one magazine in particular to do their conferences. And since then, there you go, in a blink of an eye, Rich, 10 years later, in a blink of an eye.
That's amazing. At one time, I went and visited Ann Taylor Factory and Lofts. I visited 105 stores in 28 days, me and my
Oh, I
cousin,
believe it.
on the East
You're a road
Coast.
warrior. I believe it.
We hit New York, obviously Jersey. We hit Boston, Mass. We hit Rhode Island. So we hit DC. I don't know, but we were fighting blizzards it was the whole month of January. Like we
Yeah,
started like the 3rd or
sure.
something, and we ended whatever I said 20. That was crazy. I never knew. Again, you were involved with Ann Taylor. How funny! Like you learn
Yeah,
things about people through these podcasts. That's quite interesting.
I was involved with Ann Taylor for about 3 years.
Hmm.
Maybe, yeah, I think about 3 years. I gotta check my LinkedIn. So
Oh,
I mean, yeah,
that's
I
crazy.
oversaw the facilities, and that was such a great brand to work with. I mean, because there were personal benefits, all the
Yeah, yeah.
great discounts. That's where I got all these awesome, suits and dresses, of many of which I still have.
I love
So
their clothes. Still do.
yeah,
I know it may not be. It's going a little more casual, but for their time,
yes,
they were awesome.
yes.
So let's get into you writing now. You've been involved with like 6 different books, if I'm not mistaken. I've read a couple of them. You sent them to me. Yeah, let's talk. How did you, because I've written a couple books, whatever, but I mean, you were, I seen some of the writing you were doing, which kind of inspired me to say, maybe I could do some books as well. How did you decide to do that, get involved with that?
Sure. So I've always loved to write. Ever
Okay.
since I was little, I think ever since the later years of grade school, I kept a journal. I just
Hmm.
always loved to write, right? And it was probably, and quite frankly, it was probably the most cost-effective way to keep entertained when you're growing up in the Lower East Side.
Sure.
There's 6 kids, whatever. So it was something that I just always wanted to do. And I remember when I started writing, so I had already left corporate America, right?
All right.
And I started writing, and I'll never forget my very dear friend, shout out to Tony Maldonado. I was like kind of stuck because I couldn't release the book. The first book I ever self-published under the imprint of Grand Street Publishing, that was the 7 Success Keys for the Retail Facilities Professional. That was in 2009, I think it was, or 2010.
And self-publishing wasn't as known as it is now either.
No, it wasn't.
So this
It
is a
wasn't.
whole, you had to go the old school route at this point in time, right?
Yes, correct,
Sure.
correct. So I self-published under my imprint, Grand Street Publishing. And what was interesting, I couldn't release it. I was like over obsessing with certain details, or over obsessing about like how it would be received, and so on and so forth. And I'll never forget Tony Maldonado, dear friend / industry mentor to me, he goes, you know what? Just write what you want to write. Write what makes you feel good. Don't write for other people to read.
Right.
You're writing for yourself.
Write
And
what you know.
absolutely right.
What you feel, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, that's when I released it. And then it was, and that was good. And from there on, I wrote for a lot of trade magazines,
Sure.
Many different ones, probably at least 6 or 7 publications, as a contributing columnist, as well as holding several columns for a couple of magazines. And then from there, I've been so fortunate. I've gotten involved with other book projects with other entrepreneurs, to be able to write books with the greats of Jack Canfield.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Or
he's a legend.
Brian Tracy, so those were great opportunities that I feel so privileged to have been part of that book project with, and then I recently started, when I say recently, not too recently, but it's been like 5-6 years. I recently started to publish my own books for the industry. So it's the Inspiring Leadership series.
Right.
And that's where we're interviewing, or some folks are writing their own chapters. So actually,
yeah.
Wait, where is it? Here it is. This is my sample copy. I always refer to it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And one thing really cool about this is it's been kind of referred to as the chicken soup of the soul type of book for our industry. Because, it's not really about the industry. It's really about, how these leaders, where they came from, who their mentors were. So it goes a little deeper. And again, focus on the person, which is what ShopTalk 360 is about, which is where I'm really innately attracted to, the actual people.
Right. And you have adventures in retail and restaurant development, and ShopTalk. So you have other ones besides that one, right?
That's coming up. Yes. That has not been officially available yet.
I saw those two too. I was like, you're on a roll. You're on a roll.
Got to keep the lights on.
Yes, you do.
Got to keep the lights on. Also, I've always just been a firm believer of celebrate more of what you want to see. And I just love people, and I love the industry. And
you do.
I want to celebrate these people,
Yeah, that's wonderful. You've always had so much going on, and we were always like I said, I read your books, I remember a long time ago, and I had a platform or a layout, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do my own book. And then I ended up doing another book.
You've got you've got an incredible book about relationships.
Mine's kind of off the wall a little bit, the Wingman, but that's kind of, it is what it is. Not sure if it's for everyone, but if people like, it's an honest approach at it's
a very honest approach.
Yeah. So no nonsense.
And I'm the first one to say that during my divorce process, I remember you were a huge mentor to me. I don't know if you know it, but I used to call you up for advice, when I was dating and stuff or whatever. I used to be like, do what makes you happy. You were just like,
what the hell are you going to do? You can't control, right? I mean, that's, sometimes we make things a lot more complicated. But as you know, a lot of times when we get divorced, we are lost, let's call it for what it is. We pretend we don't know what divorce is like until you go through it, because everyone's is different than the other person.
Sure.
And you have a son, so that's going to affect him differently. It's going to affect your ex-husband differently, and how you handle, anyways, we could go on forever.
But by the way, thank you, Rich. You've always been a huge support. So I just wanted to recognize that.
Well, thank you for your support. Like I said, I knew other authors, but I kind of looked at you and said, wow, Grace, you not only did one, but you were involved with many. So it's like, I'm not saying it's embarrassing, but I was like, if she can be involved with so many books and doing all this writing, why can't I? Especially with traveling and as much time as I had, because I always did screenplays.
Yes.
And I was exhausted. So I said, I need a balance between screenplays, and by no means did I ever think I was an author. But my first book too, what I went on to the Model Bible, really nobody knew that identity with me as far as, modeling when I was younger, what I went through with my daughter. So I said, let me take on something that I knew a lot of, that not a lot of other people, I think, were writing about the right way. So that was that was an interesting project for me, I guess you could say, but because of, like I said, seeing what you were doing and talking to you about what you were going through too when you were creating your books, the self-publishing at times or attaching yourself to different projects, that was really interesting and unique. So
Well, thank
I
you.
got to
Yeah,
thank you as well. So
and I think so. So we just keep on evolving, right? We just keep on evolving and changing,
absolutely.
and then anything we're producing, whether it's artwork or writing or screenplays,
Sure.
that's just kind of like a reflection of what we're during that time we're evolving and continue to evolve. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And since we're on the evolving tips, because I know we didn't want to get too in depth regarding Corona and all these things, but
Mm,
someone like yourself, me, a lot of people that are involved with retail as
yep.
well. Um, you're an entrepreneur. What do you kind of foresee as the future going on with everything, in not only retail, but many different industries?
So it's so this whole coronavirus is very near and dear to my heart because being a New Yorker, even though now I've been based out of South Florida for many years, that's always home. It
Yeah,
always is. Just like Chicago is always your home. You know what I
sure.
mean? So it's really heart wrenching to see so many New Yorkers go through that process, loved ones, and just the hardships of the economic hardships everyone's going through.
Do
You
you
know,
still have family there, Grace?
and my mom is actually, about a month ago, we moved my mom to Pennsylvania before the height of this because we knew it was going to
Okay.
be bad. So my mom is actually in Pennsylvania with my sister, but I still have family there, in the tri-state area, the
Okay.
greater New York area. And I'll tell you, Rich, it was just really difficult, because there's a sense of helplessness, like, what can I do to help? And then
Yes.
there's a sense of like, I mean, there's not much you can do. It has to ride out.
Right.
And, now that thankfully today, as we're recording, I hear that New York has leveled off in terms of number of
Right.
new cases, but the death toll will still catch up. Okay.
Sure.
So that it is what it is. Okay. So I think though, from an industry standpoint, it's going to be very interesting because with retail, restaurants, it's going to be a new norm. Whenever we settle in, whenever we're fortunate enough to settle in, and hopefully, I pray that's going to be by the end of this year or fourth quarter thereabouts. You know, um,
Right.
there's definitely going to be a new norm. Maybe restaurant tables are going to be 6 feet apart or X number apart as opposed to closer,
Sure.
and just meeting ADA guidelines for aisles. Now they have to be further apart.
Yeah.
Maybe more restaurants are going to be converting or switching up their business to focus more on takeout.
Mm-hmm.
And retail, I don't know. Retail, I think the ones that do survive, there will be new guidelines, I'm sure, and new layouts possibly to continue a lot of what's going on now with the essential businesses and the supermarkets and Costco's, where there's kind of like a one-way traffic. So maybe
Interesting.
there's a lot of reinventing there as well. But I kind of feel like by nature we're social. Folks are social. We're social animals.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so maybe it's not. Maybe there's just more guidelines now. You know.
Right.
Um,
You
so
think
we'll
from a
see.
designing, you think they're going to be designing stores now in the future, maybe differently, not being so, like a lot of things, maybe just not one cash wrap, hypothetically, right? Some stores used to, in the old days, have two or three, like Abercrombie, but maybe separating, making sure that people aren't all congregating in one area
Sure.
all the time, maybe.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, you being especially you being in the retail, construction, and facilities industry, it. So it could be. It's very possible.
Yeah, a lot of things
That
will
be it.
I don't know what movie theaters or things in that nature are going to be like, or even airplanes. I mean, I don't know how you're going to avoid. I don't know if they're going to change the seating. That sounds ridiculous, but you never know. I was just wondering what your perspective on that. We could go on forever,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
And we'll just continue to plan for the worst, and hopefully we will get through this.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
on the other side. It's just a matter of when we'll be on the other side. And it looks like hopefully we're approaching that in the months to come.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've been going back and forth with a lot of my Italian family members in Naples, mainly, some in Rome as well. And because I
Mhm.
go back and forth with them, I've been kind of giving our entire family in Chicago kind of updates on them. And when all you see on the news, I can't say, oh, that's real. A lot of what you see on the news was always Italy, Italy, Italy. They were showing you,
Yeah.
and I have a lot of elderly family members there in Italy. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like, and my heart just kept dropping. So I just started reaching out in big groups, even on my Facebook page, and then going back and
Mhm.
forth. But we're very fortunate that I could just sat in the town where a lot of my family members were. Only 2 caught it, no deaths,
Okay.
which kind
Thank
of was
goodness.
like a relief, not only in other family members in Italy, especially all the ones in Chicago. It was like, because we kept thinking, my God, what's happening here? You know, it kind of got really nerve-wracking for a while.
Sure. Sure.
And
It
that's
was
what
really
you probably
sad.
felt in New York, because I'm from Chicago. We haven't been hit as hard, and I don't have a lot of family in New York, but you just kind of see it on the media, and it kind of like just keeps hitting you right in the chest. It's
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I
never
mean,
expected it.
no,
Mm.
no. I mean, and this will change us
Yeah.
in the way we operate.
So give me a heads up on, I mean, besides this, what we're going through right now, what do you think, what are you going to be doing in the future? It's going to be writing more.
You
Uh,
know, yeah, I mean, Shop Talk 360 will always be, I want to get more people involved with Shop Talk 360,
yeah.
and possibly through Shop Talk 360 reporters, because it's not the Grace Daily Show, right? It's Shop Talk 360. Eventually, I would like to move from that and focus more on writing and focus more on video. I've been working on a lot of video projects. So it's that transition, I think, that gentle transition. And, of course, we've got, hopefully, when we're on the other side of this, some more events coming up to reschedule those out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said earlier, before I even started recording, you were talking about now doing maybe more Zoom.
Yes, definitely. So I've been doing a lot of Zoom chats, I know there was some discussion about doing a panel on Zoom, but you get this push and pull. And so
Mm,
many people are involved with like, no, let's just wait a little bit. Let's wait a while. Let's try to do this live because people are going to want to come. People are going to want to see each other and group together. I'm like, I know, but understand, depending on how we are, we might not be able to group. So
sure.
everything's kind of still unfolding as we
Yeah.
go, and we'll know more in
Yeah.
the future to
And you
come.
still do consulting. I mean, you got that going
Yes,
for you as well.
I do. And actually, what's really interesting is the last 2 years, I've been working with a lot of restaurant chains.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've been working through general contractors and also directly with brands. Hard Rock Cafe, Margaritaville, Land Shark Bar and Grill. I've been working with a lot of restaurant chains, and it was kind of interesting too, because when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a solopreneur, right?
Yeah.
You kind of do you kind of want to do many things at the same time,
Yeah.
and you're always wanting to learn. And I think just having been involved with Shop Talk
Yeah.
for going on 10 years now, I just wanted to, I started missing the action. I know it sounds crazy when you're talking to all these people and they're designing
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're
It gives you
designing.
energy.
Yeah, and I get
It's,
excited talking about them,
yeah.
interviewing them. But then after a while, I was like, wait a minute, I feel like I'm missing something. So that I started consulting. Then that turned more into a full-time role.
Right.
So I had to reel back because you can't do certain things part-time. But it was just such a great way for me to add to my wheelhouse of having designed, built,
Sure.
maintained restaurants, full service restaurants, bars, kitchen layouts, everything, indoor, outdoor seating, so it actually really brought to light that whole restaurant industry to me, who
Right.
traditionally did retail.
I didn't even know you were involved with Margaritaville. One of my close friends, one of my oldest friends in Florida, is like one of Jimmy Buffett's right-hand men, because he's in
Nice.
charge of all the entertainment for all the restaurants and
Oh, how sweet
hotels.
is that?
Yeah, you got to connect with him if we're on Facebook, right? Joe Janelle.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
is
yeah.
wonderful, him and his wife, Carrie. So we
Wow,
do
how
different.
cool is that?
Yeah, he's such, it couldn't happen to a better guy.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
so amazing. I
yeah,
hear
Jimmy
that he's
Buffett,
still.
he's
Yeah,
great. Joe Janelle's great. I'm like, and they're so
yeah, yeah,
opposite, because Joe Janelle's a New Yorker, Italian kid.
Yeah.
And he calls Joe Bob, I think. It's hysterical.
Oh,
I'll be
that's
eating
so
dinner with Joe, and they're going back and forth. It's a unique relationship them two have, to say the least. So,
that's super cool.
oh, that's super cool. I didn't know you're involved with them. Well,
Yeah.
this is it. That is it. I already mentioned there's Grace Daily, but it's DALY, right? Grace Daily.
Yes. I had to think about that. Yes.
What's it?
DALY.
ShopTalk360.com.
Thank you,
You
Rich.
want to name your books? If you want to, I mean, what the hell? Whatever you want to talk about, or let people know, or where they could find you, email,
Sure.
whatever.
Well, you can reach out to me through ShopTalk 360 website, or you can there's a contact sheet there, or you can feel free to reach out to Grace at gracedaley.com. I'm huge, very similar to Rich. I'm just a huge people person, always trying to help out folks and seeing what their needs are and connecting folks.
Yeah, and you have that
So,
like entrepreneur spirit, hard.
yeah,
You love
absolutely.
entrepreneurs. You love being around them.
Yes, yes.
So yeah. All righty, that's all I got for you today. Thank you again. It was
Thank
great.
you, Rich.
All right,
This
we'll
was
touch
so
base
much
later.
fun.
All
Okay.
right, it was
All right,
cool.
take
Don't
care.
forget Joe Janelle with a G. Go to my Facebook friends. Connect with him. Tell him who
I
you are and
will.
that you're working. He'll love that stuff. He loves it.
I'll look for that, definitely.
All right, take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.